Hello there, very good evening. This is Primetime News on TV1 for the Newsfirst, where the people come first. I'm Martin Satyanesan.
And I'm Mura. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
Police request the public to delay visits to Kandy for sacred tooth exposition. Talks on tariffs with the US successful. Details to be presented through a joint statement soon. President announces. Court imposes travel ban on father-son duo on suspicion over Dan Priasad's murder. Circular issued slashing number of official vehicles and monthly fuel quota for former presidents. Body of the late Pope Francis to lie in state until Saturday. Elon Musk to gradually step down from Doge after Tesla records drop in profit and sales.
On to those stories in detail. A train travelling from Colombo to Mirigama derailed this evening near the Gampaha railway station. The railway department stated that due to this incident, delays can be expected on the main railway line. The train, which was heading from Colombo, derailed at a track switching point near the Gampaha railway station. According to our Newsfirst correspondent, around 5 compartments have gone off the tracks.
Sri Lanka Police request the public to avoid visiting Kandy for the Sri Daladaweriya tomorrow the 24th and the day after the 25th due to the large number of devotees already present.
A statement issued by the police noted that over 300,000 devotees have already arrived in Kandy for the sacred veneration of the tooth relic of Lord Buddha. Sri Lanka Police say that a sufficient number of devotees are already in Kandy for the Sri Daladaweriya. Therefore, the police have advised the public to consider visiting on other days to ensure a more comfortable experience without overcrowding.
President Kumara Dissanayake says discussions with the US on tariffs have turned out successful and its results will be presented through a joint statement soon. The president made this statement during a public rally held in Ratnapura earlier today.
Another public rally of a series of rallies organized by the National People's Power in view of the upcoming local government elections was held in Ratnapura this evening, led by President Kumara Dissanayake.
Our ambition is to mark 2025 as the year Sri Lanka recorded its highest export revenue. The numbers have already surpassed previous records in terms of January and February. But a sudden situation arose in the USA. There was a risk of it affecting numerous sectors in our country, especially apparel. Even yesterday, representatives from our country, including the Deputy Minister of Finance, held talks with US authorities in the US itself. I have now been informed that positive results have emerged from those talks. A joint statement by the US and Sri Lanka is expected to be issued soon. We are in the process of building an economy which remains steadfast, regardless of the decisions made by another state. What was said previously? That our government would fail in 3 months. Then it became March. Recently I heard them claiming it will happen in October. Political movements that are on their knees are making claims about us failing. That isn't even comprehensible. The country we build will be one where every citizen fears the rule of law and adheres to it. The IGP was hiding from his own police force. Would it have been the case if any other government but ours was in power? Some ask me, comrade, it's true that you and your movement do not engage in corruption or wasteful acts. But what about those who did? What can we do? We can investigate those, seek advice from the Attorney General's department and file cases at the High Court. Who will take punitive measures? The High Court. The political machinery and us as politicians have no authority to punish them. Even this morning, I spoke to the Attorney General's department. Where have the investigations stalled? Where are the gaps? They informed us that a significant number of cases are on their final stage before they are taken to the High Court over the next 1.5 months. All we ask is what support we can provide. Do you need more resources, more officials, more vehicles, more workspaces. We will facilitate all of it. That is the government's role. But those agencies must conduct investigations. If the people expected the NPP to create a nation that respects the rule of law, a nation in which every citizen falls in line with the law, that is what we will deliver, and we will continue to deliver. What are the promises we have failed to keep? What are the assurances we made that we haven't fulfilled? We will protect the social contract we have with the people. Who reigns supreme in our constitution? The people. The people's mandate is what governs us all. Me as the President, the Cabinet of Ministers, the Parliament, all of us must serve to fulfill the people's mandate, the will of the people. That is what reigns supreme. What are we all committed to? To realize the aspirations of that mandate, to meet the expectations of the people, to deliver what is expected of us by the people. If those aspirations, expectations and ambitions are not being met or they are being disrupted, the mandate itself holds the power to change course. We will develop this nation. Our message to other political parties is, if you ever wish to claim power, be better than us, at least slightly better than us. But they are still miles behind us.
ඒගොල්ලන්ට කවදා හරි අනාගතේ කාලෙක බලය ඕන නම් අපිට වඩා වැඩියෙන් ටිකක් හොඳ වෙන්න. හැබැයි තාම ඉන්නේ අපිට වඩා ගව් ගානක් පිටිපස්සින්.
News First with the people.
The Colombo Magistrates Court issued a travel ban this afternoon on a father and son duo suspected in the murder of Dan Priasad, the candidate for the Kolonava Pradesh Sabha from the Sri Lanka Police.
This decision was made following a request by the Lanka Police to Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakunavala. Dan Priasad, who sustained severe injuries from a shooting last night, succumbed to his injuries after being admitted to the Colombo National Hospital.
Dan Priasad was staying at a relative's house on the 6th floor of the Lux on the 7 housing complex in Salamulla, Kolonava when he was shot last night. Two individuals arrived on a motorcycle, entered the 6th floor via the stairwell and carried out the shooting. Using a 9mm firearm, the assailants fired 8 shots at Dan Priasad before fleeing the scene. Sri Lanka Police reported that Dan Priasad was hit by 4 of the shots. He was admitted to Colombo National Hospital with severe injuries. Despite undergoing surgery and being placed in the intensive care unit, he succumbed to his injuries around midnight. After completing initial procedures last night, the body was sent to the morgue and relatives identified the body this morning. The magistrate's inquiry was conducted this afternoon. Based on the investigation so far, the police suspect this murder may have been motivated by a personal dispute. On the 26th of July 2022, Dan Priasad's brother Tilina Priasad was murdered with sharp weapons 2 individuals wearing helmets carried out that murder near the Orugodabatta flyover. The deceased Dan Priasad's brother was reportedly involved in drug trafficking, and there were 2 criminal cases pending against him. The police stated that relatives of Dan Priasad were accused of his brother's murder. A few days ago, Dan Priasad was also involved in an incident where a 3-wheeler belonging to his relatives was attacked. The police reported that after Dan Priasad's murder, the father and son duo from that particular faction of family fled the area. Following a police report this afternoon, the Colombo Magistrates Court issued a travel ban on the father and son. The police stated that investigations have revealed information about the father and son duo in connection with Dan Priasad's murder. Dan Priasad, aged 39, was actively involved in several organizations. He was a candidate of the Sri Lanka Police in the upcoming local government elections. Attorney at law Sagara Karyavasam, the General Secretary of the party, stated that Dan Priasad was included in their additional list for the Kolonnavar Pradeshya Sabha. Attorney Manoj Gamage, the media spokesperson of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, clarified the position of the Sri Lanka Police regarding the assassination.
A few days after the 1st of April, Dan Priasad called me and asked for legal advice. On the 1st of April, or as everyone knows, the Fool's Day, he was cutting a cake in front of Parliament. Several days after that, he was summoned to the CID to record a statement about it. He asked me whether he would be arrested and if he had done anything wrong. At that point, I gave him legal advice and explained how he could avoid any legal trouble, assuring him that there was no legal issue. But as of last night, he has lost his life. I believe that there is a strong suspicion that Dan Priasad's political views and his opposition to certain political forces may have contributed to his death. He once told me that there was a possibility that either he or someone in his family could be harmed or put in danger. And he asked me what he should do. We state this with responsibility. Dan Priasad was not a member of any underworld gang. Dan Priasad was not a murderer. He was not involved in drug trafficking. We clearly say that the government must take responsibility for these deaths. We have serious doubts about this incident. A shooting incident occurred last night at approximately 7:10 p.m. on Bandaranaike Roundabout Road in Katana, resulting in the death of one individual. The police reported that Mahesh Duminda Silva, a candidate for the Katana Pradeshya Sabha from the Sri Lanka Police, has been arrested in connection with the incident. According to the police, the shooting followed an argument between the candidate and another individual, which escalated. The local council candidate who allegedly carried out the shooting later surrendered to the police along with the firearm. The deceased was a resident of the Katana area.
National organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Namal Rajapaksa, said that the security personnel assigned to Mahinda Rajapaksa has been reduced.
There is a growing concern regarding the state of security in the country. The security assigned to former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is being gradually reduced. In fact, another letter was sent yesterday with further reductions. The security of the general public too appears to be declining day by day. President Mahinda Rajapaksa was the leader who brought an end to the war and led national development. As his security is being reduced, the safety of the general public is also steadily declining. Shootings are being reported from different areas of the country almost every day. Recently, a person was shot in at the magistrates' court. They still haven't been able to find the female suspect. The search for her is still ongoing. On another side, a father was shot in front of his children. A father was shot while taking his children to classes. While there may be personal issues in their lives, there is no justification for a person to be murdered in the streets. That is why the law of the country exists.
Former presidents have been asked to return extra official vehicles.
The government has decided to reduce the number of official vehicles and the monthly fuel allowance provided to former presidents. A circular was issued recently by the Secretary to the President regarding this decision. According to the circular, the number of official vehicles allocated to former presidents by the Presidential Secretariat will be limited to 2. Former presidents have been informed to return all additional vehicles to the Presidential Secretariat in accordance with this decision. Furthermore, the monthly fuel allowance for a former president has been capped at 900 litres. Previously, the monthly fuel allowance was at 2,250 litres.
The unrest that occurred last night at the Mura prison has been completely brought under control, and the security of the prison has now been ensured. All inmates have been temporarily transferred to the Agunukula Palace prison. Last night at around 8 p.m, inmates at the Mura prison began acting violently in protest against the decision to transfer 3 inmates with disciplinary issues to another prison. The inmates broke out of 2 wards and attempted to step out, prompting the police to fire warning shots into the air to control the situation. By around 11 p.m, the inmates resumed their violent behavior, throwing stones at officers. Tear gas was used to bring the situation under control. The special task force was also called in to assist. 3 officers stationed at the watchtowers sustained minor injuries and were admitted to Mura General Hospital. At approximately 12:30 a.m, the police intervened to transfer 25 female inmates to Agunukula Palace prison as a precautionary measure. This morning, the remaining inmates were also transferred to Agunukula Palace prison by prison officials. The prison spokesperson confirmed that the situation is now under control and the security of the prison has been ensured.
අද උදෑසන වන විට සිද්ධිය සම්පූර්ණයෙන් පාලනය කරලා බන්ධනාගාරය සාමාන්‍ය පරිදි කටයුතු කරන්න හැකියාව ලැබුණා. ඊට අමතරව ආරක්ෂක පියවරක්.
By this morning, the situation was fully under control and the prison is now functioning normally. As a security measure, 25 female inmates were transferred to the Agunukula Palace prison last night. A committee chaired by a prison commissioner and comprising 2 prison superintendents has been appointed by the Commissioner General to investigate the incident. Preliminary observations indicate some damage to the buildings and certain areas within the prison. 3 officers with minor injuries were admitted to the Mura General Hospital last night after being attacked with cement stones while on duty at the watchtowers. There is no need for the relatives of the inmates to panic. No inmate has been injured so far, and we will not allow such incidents to occur. We have ensured the security around the prison and no inmate has escaped. The Sri Lanka Police have fulfilled their responsibilities. Investigations have been initiated based on a police complaint and the damage to property is being assessed.
In accordance with the resolution passed by Parliament, Speaker of the House has appointed an inquiry committee to investigate allegations against Inspector General of Police, Desha Bandhu Tennakone. This action is taken under the provisions of the Removal of Officers Procedure Act No. 5 of 2002.
The committee will be chaired by Supreme Court Justice Preeti Padman Surasena, appointed by the Chief Justice as per the Act. Additionally, retired Supreme Court Justice Neil Iddawala has been appointed as a member of the committee with the consensus of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Justice Iddawala currently serves as the chairman of the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. Furthermore, Lalit Ekanayaka, chairman of the Police Commission, has been appointed to the committee by virtue of his official capacity. The committee is tasked with investigating the allegations allegations against IGP Thennakoon and reporting its findings. Following the committee's report, Parliament will need to pass a resolution to recommend the removal of the IGP to the President.
Today is day 6 of Sri Daladaweriya. According to reports, over 300,000 devotees had visited the historic exposition of the Sacred Tooth by today.
Devotees continued to pay their respects to the Sacred Tooth relic today, with crowds arriving from 11 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. along 3 main routes in Kandy. Traffic disruptions were reported on the Kandy-Katugastura road near the Ratubokwa area due to the large gathering of people. According to the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, or IESL, a special system using AI technology has been implemented from today to conduct a census on devotees arriving in Kandy for the exposition. This system will also track the people currently waiting in queues and those hoping to pay their respects to the Sacred Tooth relic. The District Secretary of Kandy has instructed the implementation of this system from today due to the large number of people attending the Sri Daladaweriya.
The District Secretary and the Governor made a request from us day before yesterday to conduct a census. This was to obtain the number of devotees attending the exposition daily and to facilitate the provision of certain services for those in line to venerate the Sacred Tooth. As the IESL, we offered to conduct this free of charge because disruptions had occurred since a larger crowd than what was expected had arrived. We will calculate the number of devotees who venerated the Sacred Tooth and those who remain in queues daily. Police
and Triforces have ensured measures are taken to provide all necessary facilities for those attending. While a large number of devotees arrived in Kandy today, among them was the leader of the Dambana indigenous community, Vishwakirti Vanaspati Uruwarige Vanilatto, who also paid his respects to the Sacred Tooth relic earlier this morning.
We made traditional offerings to the Sacred Tooth. We considered it an offering to Lord Buddha, who is still alive. The youngsters of our community were able to venerate the Sacred Tooth. We are grateful for providing us such an opportunity.
ඒකින්ද පුතේ සියලු දෙනාටම මේ පිණුත් අයිති වේවා. අපි ඇත්තටම සතුටුයි. මම පළවෙනි පාර හරියට බලන්නත් බැරුණා. ඊට පස්සේ පොලිස් නෝනා කෙනෙක් ළඟට ගිහින් එයාට කියවම එයා එක් කරගෙන ගියා. හරිම සතුටුයි. මේ වෙලාවේ මේ දකුණු ගම් කකුල කැඩලා තියෙද්දිත් ඒත් මං ආව වන්දනා කරලා හම්බන්ත දිස්ත්‍රික්කේ ඉඳලා. යන්තම් දැක්ක හීනයක් හැබැයි දෙවිනෝතර දැක්ක හිතුනොත් මම අවසන් දවසට එන්න බලාපොරොත්තු ඉන්නවා. වඳින්න. දර ආසයි. දැක්කා වගේ තමයි දැන් දතු දැක්ක එක. ලොකම සතුටක් ඇති වුණා.
The exposition of the Sacred Tooth relic will continue from 11 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. daily until the 27th of April. Even as night approached today, a large crowd was seen gathered to venerate the Sacred Tooth.
Biz Fast.
Tesla boss Elon Musk has pledged to significantly cut back his role in the US government after the electric car firm reported a huge drop in profit and sales for the start of this year. At the same time, the United States and Japan are moving closer to an interim arrangement on trade, but many of the biggest issues are being put off.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk began his company's earnings call by saying that his time spent running President Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency will drop significantly starting in May. Musk, who has watched Tesla's stock tumble by more than 40% this year, said he'll continue to support the president with the Department of Government Efficiency, quote unquote, to make sure that the waste and fraud that they stop does not come roaring back. After spending almost $300 million in the 2024 campaign to help return Trump to the White House, Musk created the Department of Government Efficiency and joined the administration with a mission to drastically reduce the size and capability of the federal government. Musk's commentary came after his company reported a disappointing first quarter results, including a 20% year-on-year slump in automotive revenue and 71% plunge in net income. On its website, which was last updated on Sunday, the Department of Government Efficiency says its cuts have led to an estimated $160 billion in savings. However, Musk's estimates of savings have been challenged, and the department has deleted some of its largest purported savings. Over that same stretch, Tesla has lost roughly $600 billion in market cap. US President Donald Trump says he has no intention of firing Jerome Powell after criticizing the head of the Federal Reserve. But he added that he would like Powell to be a little more active when it comes to cutting interest rates. Last week, the president intensified his criticism of the Fed chief, calling him a quote-unquote major loser. The comment sparked a sell-off of stocks, bonds and the US dollar, but financial markets have since been recovering from those losses. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that tariff and trade wars undermine the legitimate rights and interests of all countries, hurt the multilateral trading system and impact the world economic order. Xi Jinping made these comments during a meeting with Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev in Beijing, where he said that China is willing to work with Azerbaijan to safeguard the international system and carry out in-depth law enforcement and security cooperation with the Azerbaijan side. European markets are expected to open higher on Wednesday as global market sentiment rebounds amid receding concerns over a trade war between the US and China and President Donald Trump's criticism of the US Federal Reserve. The United States and Japan are moving closer to an interim arrangement on trade, but many of the biggest issues are being put off. Such an interim framework will not tackle the thorniest issues facing the two countries in their trade relationship, and it was still possible that no final deal could be reached. Trump has hit Japan with 24% tariffs on its exports to the US, although, like most of his levies, they have been paused until early July. A 10% universal rate remains in place, as does a 25% duty on cars, a mainstay of Japan's export-heavy economy.
The World Bank says that Sri Lanka's economy has made a remarkable recovery in 2024, recording a growth rate of 5%, surpassing World Bank's projected 4.4%. The announcement was made in a statement.
The World Bank says that Sri Lanka's economy has made a remarkable recovery in 2024, recording a growth rate of 5%, surpassing the World Bank's projected 4.4%. In a statement on Wednesday, the World Bank said that this growth has been driven by strong performances in industry and services, particularly in construction and tourism-related services. However, the World Bank forecasts that growth will moderate to 3.5% in 2025 due to the lingering effects of the crisis and structural impediments to growth amid global headwinds and unprecedented trade policy uncertainty. The World Bank's biannual Sri Lanka Development Update, titled Staying on Track, was released today. Despite the positive growth and fiscal performance, the report highlights significant challenges that remain. The World Bank reported that while the economy is recovering, many Sri Lankans are still struggling, adding that household incomes, employment and overall welfare are still well below pre-crisis levels, and the poverty rate remained alarmingly high at 24.5% in 2024. It went on to note that the country's labour market continues to struggle, leading to increased emigration as people look for opportunities abroad. The report underscores that medium-term growth and poverty reduction depend on maintaining macroeconomic stability and implementing key structural reforms amid an increasingly uncertain global environment. The World Bank forecasts moderate growth of around 3.1% for Sri Lanka in 2026.
Sri Lanka's Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, Mahinda Samaraweera, reflecting on the country's journey from economic crisis to recovery, highlighted that structural weaknesses, policy mistakes and external shocks culminated in the 2022 crisis. He was speaking at a panel discussion on the sidelines of the IMF and World Bank spring meetings.
In fact, I was appointed as Finance Secretary in April 2022 when the country was navigating through its worst economic crisis since independence in 1948. At the same time, Sri Lanka was facing severe difficulties. As you can see, there were a lot of structural weaknesses, long-standing structural weaknesses, which were sort of affecting the performance of the country. And there were some series of domestic policy missteps as well. And then there were some exogenous shocks. So culmination of these shocks was the crisis that occurred in 2022. So if you see the features of this, we had chronically low revenue to GDP ratio, which was around 8.3% of GDP, one of the lowest in the world at that time. And then the chronic fiscal deficits as well as the external deficits. So we had this current account as well as external current account deficit and also the huge budget deficits at that time. So all these external imbalances and long-standing sovereign bank SO in excess, which was also there, creating complex interlinkages, including cross-holding of debt between these connected entities. So there was a sovereign credit rating downgrade as well, and the country lost the capital market access, and then continued service debt amidst dwindling foreign exchange reserves. All these were, resulted the crisis, and eventually usable foreign exchange reserves dropped to a mere 24 million at that time. The IMF's technical assistance and policy advice helped design and implement a comprehensive reform program addressing not just the fiscal issues, but monetary and financial as well as governance and institutional challenges as well. So we initiated a comprehensive reform program anchored in debt restructuring, revenue-based fiscal consolidation, and institutional strengthening. So we also prioritized building a resilient social protection system to shield vulnerable populations, because poor and the vulnerable were the most affected at that time. So beyond financial assistance, our strong collaboration in capacity development in public financial management, on revenue administration, governance, and institutional reform, social safety net expansion and targeting, fiscal transparency and digitalization has helped us to shape up our policy responses at that time. So these fundamental reforms were crucial to enable the addressing of root causes of this crisis, as opposed to simply remedying the symptoms of the crisis.
Peter Brewer, former mission chief of the Asia and Pacific Department at the International Monetary Fund, commented on Sri Lanka's reforms.
So really, the authorities' resolve in implementing reforms, significant reforms, and implementing them quickly was key in yielding these very commendable results. Addressing the imbalances that emanated from the lack of fiscal revenue, along with many other reforms in many areas, allowed the economy to bounce back strongly and quickly. It grew 5% last year, and altogether, from when it started growing in the second half of 23, the economy has now recovered almost half of the output that was lost from the peak in 2018 to the lowest point in 2023. That's a very short amount of time. To achieve the much-needed fiscal consolidation, the program needed to address a combination of weaknesses relating to low tax rates, a narrow tax base, and low collection efficiency. Capacity development played a critical role in designing these reforms. Extensive capacity development was provided in the areas of tax policy, revenue administration, and public financial management. I counted, I think, approximately 50 missions just in the fiscal area from when the program negotiations started in mid-22 until earlier this year. So in sum, I would say the ownership by the authorities, the early involvement by capacity development providers, and the very close collaboration between the authorities, the CD experts, and the IMF program team were key to a significant turnaround in Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
In light of the current reciprocal tariffs, the G24 is exploring strategies to mitigate the impact on emerging economies. Pablo Cuerno, Secretary of Finance for Argentina and a key figure in the G24, responding to a question posed by Newsfirst Zulfikar Farsan at a press conference on Tuesday, provided an in-depth look at the group's approach.
Just to add to that, I got an advanced question from Zulfikar Farsan, Newsfirst Sri Lanka. In the light of reciprocal tariff currently in place, what strategy is the G24 considering as a working group to alleviate the pressure on emerging economies? So that's related to your question as well. So, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Thank you for the questions. It's a very diverse group of countries, and each of one has its own peculiarities and strengths and weaknesses in the midst of the current trade situation. So, in general, what I would say is that the fallout of this uncertainty that we're facing creates more volatility. And as emerging market countries and developing countries, what you face is a situation in which, in addition to the trade tensions, what you have is a situation on the capital markets, on the capital flows, things that are, based on the uncertainty. What happens is, flows are expecting a solution. As one of the members said today, we can deal with good news, we can deal with bad news. We need to know what to do under uncertainty. As we're going through this process of trade negotiations globally, and as definitions are set, then we will know how to react. In the meantime, as we said in the communiqué and as we said in my opening remarks, the first line of defense, the thing that is within our country's control, is our own domestic agenda. We need to earn resilience into our own economies, bring resilience into our own economies in such a way that we have a fiscal path that is credible, that we have sound monetary policies as well that back that fiscal consolidation program, because at the end of the day, that's what investors are looking at. Investors are looking at, their own, the different countries' situation and see how they can cope with this level of uncertainties. We have faced different crises in the past, globally, pandemic being the last one, and we have, as a collective number of countries, been able to achieve a level of resilience that is very good. I mean, that resilience is being tested once again, and that's why we also need to work in conjunction among the different countries, not only G24, but in a global context, to address these situations. But I think the homework also needs to be consolidated at home in order to then continue moving forward. And as such, we are also obviously fostering, our trade relationships among the different countries. We are doing it among the G24, among G20. So there are various areas of cooperation and consolidation there as well.
Agustra Events presents Boys Avenue live in Sri Lanka. Kick it to their biggest hits and takes on the 25th April at Water's Edge 7 onwards. Call 077 69 288 57.
Media sponsors Yes 101, Legends 966 and TV1.
The local government election Sri Lanka 2025.
What caused the breakdown in alliance talks between the SJP and the UNP? Here's the latest update on the situation.
The General Secretary of the United National Party, Thalatha Attukorala, accused Sajith Premadasa of jeopardizing the planned alliance between the United National Party and Samagi Jana Balawegaya.
The leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Sajith Premadasa, does not have an understanding of this. Sajith Premadasa is the one who should completely be held responsible for the current situation, not the leaders of the past. Sajith Premadasa is an individual who does not have a sense of gratitude.
The The alliance between the Samagi Jana Balawegaya and United National Party had not materialized due to a plan to name Sagala Ratnayaka as Colombo's mayoral candidate. This was the response provided by SJB MP SM Marika.
The plan was to name Sagala Ratnayaka as the mayoral candidate of Colombo. Listen carefully. We are not so naive to fall for such tactics. Can we agree to give the mayorship to Sagala Ratnayaka?
Is MP Marika's claim true? The issue was presented to representatives of both factions during yesterday's Satana program aired on Sirasa TV. That's completely false. Ranil Wickramasinghe's suggestion for the mayorship was Iran Wickramaratne, who is in Sajith Premadasa's faction.
Maybe MP Marika was told that from the other side. I don't know. But I was directly involved in the talks. I participated in 3 of the 4 rounds between the UNP and SJB. We didn't mainly focus on local government elections. Our talks were about how to work together in national politics by uniting the UNP and the SJB.
Is a coalition still possible? Around 18 current SJB MPs and myself suggested to Sajith Premadasa that the 2 parties should unite. We cannot win separately, but he did not agree. That is why I left. I realized I can't operate under someone who is immature.
The SJB and UNP can still work together. However, it cannot be decided alone by the SJB. The UNP must agree to it. When we talk about the past, there are certain people around Ranil Wickramasinghe who won't let him go forward with this.
The personal library of the late Mangala Samaravira, Sri Lanka's former Minister of Foreign Affairs and Finance, was formally handed over to several public institutions at a commemorative event in Colombo yesterday.
The late Mangala Samaravira's library was gifted to 4 public institutions across Sri Lanka. Hosted by the Bandaranayake Centre for International Studies, the event was held in collaboration with the Samaravira Gunawardena family and took place a day after what would have been Mangala Samaravira's 69th birthday. Attending the event were former President Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga and Western Province Governor Hanif Yusuf, alongside family, friends and colleagues of late former minister. Opening the event, Chancellor Gunawardena, Mangala's niece, reflected on the significance of the collection, noting that the library was deeply personal.
Books on political philosophy, strategy, media, from East, West, and very much with a focus on Sri Lanka. Several also policy papers of some of those who are in this room today. These, of course, show natural alignment with Mangala the politician. But I also think there was such a natural alignment with his books on religion, art, architecture from around the world, biographies of fashion designers, and David Bowie, of course. Books on travel, on languages, and that moment in the 2000s that he forayed into wanting to do photography and learning how to do digital editing. This reading, I think, reflects most strongly on why his approach and the execution of his political actions was often innovative, couched in the words of dreams, of vision and idealism.
Addressing the attendees and well-wishers of the event, former President Chandrika Bandaranayake Kumaratunga spoke about Samaravira's vision.
He was honest, he hated dishonesty, he was full of integrity, he was a democrat, he believed in freedom, as all of you said, and he was fiercely passionate about what he believed in. I can relate many incidents of Mangala getting very angry and passionately angry when he saw acts of racism or injustice, corruption, and in that Mangala and I shared a lot. He wasn't just a man who spoke nice words like most of our so-called politicals. He actually conceptualized policies. He had a vision about what he wanted to do, and he had, as I said, the ability to implement it. It must have come from all his reading, and I suppose because he was an intelligent man. So it was very easy to work with Mangala. When we worked together and I had to lead many projects, Mangala was the first person I would invite for discussions and put my idea forward and say, go now and think about it and tell me how to do it. And he would come back with a brilliant idea. Finally, I would like to say, if Mangala lived, this country would have been very different. Even the government would have been different.
Mangala's collection, comprising approximately 2,000 books, has been distributed across the BCIS Library, the Colombo Public Library, the Jaffna Public Library, and a dedicated donation to Stefan Andre Joachim in recognition of his mentorship of creative and LGBTQ youth.
The Chartered Accountants Student Society of CA Sri Lanka officially launched the 39th International CA Students Conference at a press briefing held in Colombo yesterday.
The press conference held by the Chartered Accountants Student Society emphasized the society's growing impact beyond academics. President of the Chartered Accountants Student Society, Ruqayya Hamid, also underscored the role of CASS in representing over 44,000 CA students across Sri Lanka, advocating for their development across academic, professional and personal spheres.
The CA Student Society is the official students' body of CA Sri Lanka, representing over 44,000 chartered accountant students. Our vision is simple, yet powerful. We strive to endeavor, to inspire, and to add value for the students. Our mission is to serve as a vibrant student body that promotes the interest of CA students in education, literary, sports, social, cultural, and other areas of development, working closely with CA Sri Lanka and building connections with student communities both locally and globally.
The upcoming conference, themed Transform Mindset, Transcend Boundaries, is expected to attract over 1,500 participants and will feature sessions on cutting-edge topics such as artificial intelligence, digital transformation and mental resilience, led by a distinguished lineup of speakers.
Pope Francis will now lie in state at St. Peter's Basilica, where the public will be able to pay their respects to him over the coming days.
The solemn procession to the Basilica marked the start of a 3-day period for the faithful to pay their respects to Pope Francis ahead of Saturday's funeral mass. The College of Cardinals led the procession of the coffin through the Vatican's Santa Marta Square under the Arch of the Bells and into St. Peter's Square. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, Carmelengo of the Holy Roman Church, began the liturgical rite in the chapel of the Casa Santa Marta with a brief prayer for the soul of Pope Francis.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
In the opening prayer, Cardinal Farrell thanked God for the 12-year ministry of the late Pope. Over 20,000 people had gathered in the square to pay their respects to the late Pope, erupting into subdued but sustained applause as his coffin was carried up the steps and into St. Peter's Basilica. The late Pope's coffin was placed in front of the altar of the confession, and the choir chanted the Litany of the Saints in Latin for the repose of his soul. Members of the College of Cardinals paid their respects to the late Pope Francis, followed by the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Basilica. The general public is now able to visit St. Peter's Basilica to pay their respects to the late Pope. Tens of thousands have already descended on Vatican City over the last 2 days to pay their respects to the late Pontiff. The Vatican announced that Pope Francis's funeral mass will be held at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 26th of April in St. Peter's Square. At least 250,000 people, including patriarchs, cardinals, archbishops, bishops and priests from across the globe will attend the funeral on Saturday. The Dean of the College of Cardinals, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, will lead the funeral service.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's news. But before we wrap things up, we leave you with a glimpse of a mesmerizing waterfall on tonight's edition of Beautiful Sri Lanka.
Take care
and
good
good
night.
night.
Beautiful Sri Lanka.
Located near the 5th Mile Post area along the Badulla Passara Road, Vevassa Falls is a truly enchanting sight. It begins its journey from the peaks of the Namanukula mountain range. Adding to the natural charm of the Badulla town, Vevassa Falls draws many visitors eager to witness its beauty. The best part, you can enjoy the stunning view right from the roadside. We'll be back again with more glimpses into the hidden gems and breathtaking landscapes of Sri Lanka.